tricky questions to answer because his history, as I've noted here, doesn't exactly serve as a guide. Joining me now is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. He is the perfect person to talk to about historical precedent, the moment we're in, all of the things. So let me just start with kind of where I ended there. I mean, you've said there's an attack on the Constitution. That feels very clear here. I think the question a lot of people have is, what can be done to stop it?
We got 125 cases that have been filed across the country, and 50 federal courts have already entered temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions against Trump. So let's start with the positive news that the courts are working, they're doing their job. That's why they're talking about impeaching all these federal judges. That's why they're attacking Judge Boasberg for insisting on answers, because you can't disobey an order of a federal court. As Chief Justice Roberts emphasized this week, the proper response to disagreement with the substance of a judicial opinion is to appeal the opinion, not to try to impeach the judge, certainly not for people to go out and visit threats upon the judge and the judge's family. And so we've got to play these cases out in court. The Trump administration has just thrown caution to the winds. I mean, the great example of this, of course, is the birthright citizenship executive order. The first sentence of the 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. It is just as plain as day. And we have Obama judges, Biden judges, Reagan judges, Trump judges, all striking down what Trump did. In fact, the Reagan judge said it was the easiest case he'd ever decided in his life. You don't have to be a lawyer to know what's wrong with you. You just have to know how to read. And in case after case, they say, you have just totally blown past the Constitution. So we've got to stand up for the independence of the judiciary. And we see this happening all over the world now, that when courts block an autocratic executive or someone with dictatorial ambitions, they begin to attack the judges, they attack the lawyers, they attack the law firms. That's what's happening in America right now. And so the whole country has got to stand up for the independence of the judiciary and for the rule of law.
I mean, I would note to your point, I mean, Trump called Judge Boasberg a, quote, radical left lunatic, among other things. He's had a 3-decade-long career. And apropos of nothing else, he was literally roommates with Justice Kavanaugh at Yale Law School. When you say people need to stand up, because part of what we're seeing here, especially in the case of these Venezuelan migrants, is he's defying the court, he's ignoring the court order. So what does it mean? What can people actually do if he's ignoring what the judicial system is doing?
Well, the first attack in that case is on Congress, right? Because the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 says that the president does have the power to deport foreign nationals of hostile powers with which we are at war or who have invaded America. Well, it's Congress that has the power to declare war on Venezuela or anybody else. We have not declared war against Venezuela, so we're not at war with Venezuela, nor has there been a military invasion. And if you're just going to describe the presence of undocumented immigrants as a military invasion, then we've been invaded by 50 or 80 or 90 countries, and we're at war with the whole world. And I think that Judge Boasberg remarked upon what a breathtaking expansion of presidential authority that would be. But in any event, someone who's an originalist, who's a textualist, would stick with the actual statute, which says it's up to Congress to decide whether or not we're in war. So that's the first attack. But then after having blown right past the plain language of the statute, they're violating the due process rights of the people who are being deported. Now, if they're criminal gangbangers and they should be in prison for drug dealing or murder, then they should be in prison for murder or drug dealing. But we don't know who those people are. And families have come forward to say these people some of them have nothing to do with gangs. But we don't know. That's why the two most beautiful words in the English language are due process. As one of my professors once said, due process sorts out who's really guilty and who's not. We can all talk about lots of cases where in the rush of judgment, people are swept up and saying they did it, and then later it turns out they didn't do it, and they have to be released, and they put the real people in. That's why due process is so essential in our system of government.
No question. And that is one of the things I mentioned. It differentiates us. And a due process is, right, giving people the opportunity to defend themselves and to be participants in the court of law, which is he's not allowing for. That's part of the violation.
And also making sure that guilty people don't escape.
That's true, too. It's both. Let me ask, and you're the expert here. I'm just agreeing with you. Let me ask, so Judge Boasberg had a hearing on Friday. We all watched that. He said he will get to the bottom of whether the administration violated his order. I just give a little outline of that. Tomorrow, the D.C. Circuit Court will hear the administration's appeal. This story is really horrifying people for good reason. What should people expect? What happens next? What happens after this hearing on Monday? What are you watching for?
Well, again, until we got into this very gloomy, uncertain moment in American history, it was taken for granted by everybody across the spectrum that you follow the orders of a court. And if you disagree with it, you appeal to the next level up. You go to in this case, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and then you go to the Supreme Court. That's the right way to deal with it. You don't unleash personal attacks on the judge. You don't try to impeach the judge. I mean, I've looked at it. There have been 15 cases of judicial impeachment in American history. It's for stuff like corruption, taking bribes on the bench, or habitual drunkenness. Not even like one day's drunkenness, okay? Habitual drunkenness, but it's serious misconduct. It has nothing to do with doctrinal differences. It has nothing to do with your interpretation of this statute or the meaning of this constitutional provision. We're moving into very dangerous territory where they're saying, you agree with us as to what the law means, and we're going to offer some startlingly original new interpretations. You agree with us, and if you don't, we're going to impeach you.
It's pretty startling. I have so many things I could ask you about, but I just want to note, because you were just telling me before this, you just did a town hall meeting in a Republican district yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
You were saying 800 or 900 people showed up. Really a powerful show. Are you going to do more of these moving forward?
Absolutely. Well, I was up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, with Susan Wild and my colleague Mary Gay Scanlon, and that was fantastic. People are so grateful that there are members of Congress who come when their own member can't quite squeeze it into their schedule to make it.
Their schedule, yes.
And so, look, there's a significant national conversation taking place right now about this full-blown assault on American democratic institutions. Everybody's part of it. People in blue districts, people in red districts, people in swing districts, in the urban areas, in the rural areas. We're all part of this together because our entire constitutional democracy is now under siege.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you for explaining both the law to us and also being out there in all these districts. It's always great to see you.
It's great to see you, Jen.
And coming up, the crowd's turning out to see Bernie Sanders and AOC just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Congressman Greg Casar was on stage with them yesterday.